Good morning, colleagues and friends. I'm very disappointed and I'm not present to join you for the discussions around important topics on the agenda for this meet. Unfortunately, my wife and I contracted COVID several weeks ago. And while we are well on the way to recovery, I made the decision that while I would likely test negative prior to the opening of the meeting, it would be wise to remain quarantined from all assembled groups. Excuse me. The topics of this panel, as represented by the questions focusing the discussion, are critical issues. They have long been the basis of the international agenda and work of GCHERA since its very inception several decades ago. I am very pleased that Dr. French has asked me to offer some remarks on the topics by this video. In the interest of time, I've chosen to take but a couple of the questions, combine them in a reordered manner, so hopefully they may assist the facilitation and framing of discussions that will occupy all of you over the next several days. The challenges of today are indeed those that we have been discussing in a wide variety of fora for well over 40 years. They continue to focus our attention even now, but with a much heightened urgency given the overlays of the global pandemic, as well as new and ongoing conflicts that threaten peace and human prosperity in several geographic regions. I group the challenges into three broad categories. First, global climate change and environmental sustainability. Second, a safe and secure and abundant food supply for the world. And third, environmental stewardship and ecosystem management. I'll briefly touch on each of these. First, global climate change and environmental sustainability. For decades, we have been observing and talking about climate change, but bringing forward too little concrete action to address it. Yes, at the Paris Agreement penned in 2015, those assembled countries committed to actions to limit the precipitous rise of global temperatures. Since the signing of that accord, some progress has been made, as broad public focus on this issue has brought together government, private sector, and investor communities to make anew strong commitments to reach a net zero point of intensifications. Yet in 2021, carbon emissions went quite strongly in the wrong direction. Extreme weather events such as fire, flooding, and severe droughts, along with the rising sea levels, continue to threaten the rich biodiversity of our planet and remain much unabated. Regretfully, last year's International Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland, failed to produce the level of commitments necessary to keep global temperature rises to a level of 1.5 degrees centigrade. The extreme weather events, coupled with the warming of the planet, has a clear impact upon the ecosystems of the globe, and in themselves threaten our fragile biodiversity and genetic resource systems. Second area, a safe and secure and abundant food supply for the world. The burgeoning human population growth is expected to surpass 8.5 billion within the next 7 years, 9.7 billion by 2050, and 11.2 billion by the turn of the century. And while we do see a shrinkage in fertility rates, there is also an increase in life expectancy. Taken together, these argue for a substantial increase in agriculture production to combat the escalation of a deprivation of food for the population and the ever-present specters of hunger, poverty, and malnutrition. Hunger, poverty, and malnutrition are clearly interrelated challenges. Of these, poverty is the force that inevitably leads to increases in both. The connections among these are well documented. From the period of 2015 through 2019, we saw measurable decreases in worldwide poverty percentage rates, and the projected trends moving forward did hold promise. But the emergence of the pandemic quickly reversed the trend, as an estimated 100 to 150 million people were pushed back into extreme poverty, all but erasing all the gains of previous years. And with this, we see the expected demonstrable increases in hunger, malnutrition, and disease. Add to this equation the issues of conflict, and an even more challenging situation evolves. Think about this. There are more active conflicts around the globe now than any time since World War II. Civil and internal political conflicts, insurgencies, and now even outright war have brought exasperating realities of human displacement as people seek refuge away from home. In excess of 85 million, and that number grows, have experienced dislocation to refugee camps or other perceived safer locations. This migratory behavior brings with it increased food insecurity, inadequate health facilities, and crime, and escalating stress and tension upon the whole of a normal, healthy, functioning society. The results are all too obvious. Third area, environmental stewardship and ecosystem management. Increasing sustainable agricultural development for increased food production through agricultural intensification places serious increasing demands upon our natural resource systems. The preservation of these systems is essential to all sustainability models. Land, soil, and water, and the nutrients they provide are the building blocks for agricultural production. All are under stress. Land conversion has grown throughout the past century along with the growing population. However, the conversion has slowed in recent decades as advances in technology have been responsible for higher yields of existing farmland. The introduction of high-yielding crop varieties, irrigation, and the application of chemical fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides, coupled with increasing sophisticated mechanization, has allowed the increasing intensification of agriculture. However, faced with the population increases and their accompanying food demands, there will be inevitably a press for the use of additional arable land. But inescapably, there will also be competition for land as urban and industrial expansion continue to swell, responsive to the demographic growth patterns. A balance needs to be found between the two, while at the same time creating new agricultural production modalities, such as urban agriculture. To the extent that new lands are converted for agricultural production, care must be taken for minimal, if any, damage to the biodiversity of the ecological landscape. Often in the past, this has been an afterthought. Irreparable damage has been the consequence. Many production achievements have been associated with management practices that paid little attention to long-term sustainability. A result has been severely degraded soils that are depleted of the essential nutrients and biota. Carefully designed impact studies which account for genetic biota and nutrient values before land conversion can prevent such unintended consequences to such important resources. The skills of our educators and researchers at both national and international research institutes and universities will need to be enhanced and applied to the discovery of new knowledge requisite to support effective soil management protocols and remediation efforts. Just as land pressures exist, so do those for water. Agriculture is a water-intensive industry. 70% of water use goes to irrigation. Water quality and quantity are critical elements to maintain viable ecosystems. Increased urbanization due to population growth, along with the concurrent growth of agriculture and industrial processes to support it, has heightened the demand for water resources. Water has become a very precious commodity as aquifers continue to shrink and global temperatures rise and display increasing variability. Water conservation management systems may become elements of critical consideration for all cropping systems. As good as these systems may now be, needed is continued research, development, and the application of technologies that will both lead to the improvement of crop production efficiencies using less water, as well as the continued development of drought-resistant crops. Water quality and quantity availability starts at the watershed level, and the protection of these areas are critical. Universities, through their research and training efforts, can assist those responsible for watershed management by implementing technologies and practices to both protect and improve water quality and quantity. You know, we would be remiss not to add to this ecosystem consideration the interaction of air with the biosystems challenges. The impact of greenhouse gases is no longer an issue of any debate. No longer does one question that production agriculture is a significant contributor to the atmospheric emissions, particularly from large animal feedlots, but also from fossil fuel burning mechanization. Major hazardous gases are produced by the agricultural enterprise, from the decomposition of manure to the tractor and combine emissions. Although this is not so much an immediate concern in the developing world, it is certainly one to watch. The challenges outlined here are indeed the challenges of society. They are the challenges to agriculture and science, and challenges for our institution of higher education for the discovery and applications of knowledge. These are challenges that, in fact, demand our attention. They're challenges that call upon the most creative applications of intellectual talent. They are challenges which require solutions if, as a people, we are to sustain an ever-increasing level of comfort and peace in the decades coming before us. The very quality of life on this planet is wholly dependent upon our willingness and our ability to find the solutions. The solutions to each of the grand challenges that range from the doubling of food production to the eradication of poverty and hunger, and to the protection of our fragile ecosystem, are to be found resident in the creativity of our higher education systems. Each requires the careful creation of new knowledge. Each requires the transmission and integration of knowledge across the disciplines, from the physical and the biological sciences to those of the social sciences. Each requires reaching beyond the comfort of the lecture hall, the laboratory, and the campus to form external partnerships with those of common purpose, with government entities, with non-government organizations, business and community interests. At the laboratory bench, in the field trial plots, in the classroom, be it virtual or physical, the mediums of innovation are alive and well. The development of human capacity through education is the overriding ingredient requisite to each challenge we face, both now and in the future. No other institution in our society has the collective skills, the collective competencies, and the collective experiences to effect change as well as higher education. However, too many times, we are cloistered by our own hesitancy and artificial structures to reach out and bridge imaginary divides. We populate our institution of higher education because we believe in the process of learning and in the undeniable benefits of an educated populace. We engage in, embrace, and marvel at the discovery of new knowledge, for we know that its application can better mankind. We know that the fabric of our society would not be woven as well were it not for our intimate engagement with it. We are indeed the fortunate ones, but we need to do a better job of sharing this wealth with those whose circumstances are constrained by the absence of education, the absence of the opportunity for learning, and the marvels of discovery. This can be addressed by mounting vibrant educational exchange programs with those from the developing world to train the cadres of researchers, educators, and advisory personnel, which are critical ingredients for the advancing economic and social development. We can do so by sending our best and brightest scientific talent into those countries to provide educational opportunities on the home turf. We can assist in the building the higher education systems required for sustainable ongoing development. Finally, we can do so by engaging ourselves to seek out and engage our colleagues who share our commitment to work with those regional and global organizations which have in their missions the attainment of our mutual goals. It is our community of higher education that can and must be the bearers of the torch of change. I believe that we have a moral obligation to engage ourselves in our institutions in this work of change. We know that our universities provide opportunities for learning, are the vehicles for creativity and innovation, and they are the key to prosperity, both personal and societal. What better role for our institutions might we possibly envision than to have contributed to a world free of hunger, with sustainable ecological systems, free of disease, and one living in peace with itself? That would indeed be enough. Thanks very much, folks, and have a great meeting.